Hey friends, welcome back to Heartscapes, where we're practicing the system of Reiki to be rooted, to be spacious, to be connected, and to remember ourselves. My name is Michaela. Welcome back to the studio. Really glad to have you here. Well, it is a bright blue, fresh, clean day outside after several weeks of solid rain here in Central California. And it's feeling like there's this kind of fresh energy in the air. And I thought that I would take that opportunity of this feeling of freshness and newness here in January to share a little bit of a different video with you, to give you a little bit of a behind the scenes look at kind of what holds this YouTube channel and the content that I get to share with you in this space. Because you all get to receive the outcomes, the insights and learnings and teachings and products and such that have been gathered inside of a larger container. And that is the container of my business, of Heartscapes Reiki. And so I wanted to give you an opportunity to learn a little bit more about that container and to share some of the plans that I have been working on for this coming year. Like many of us, I've been doing visioning and strategic planning for the coming year, and in a little bit even more of a structured way than I normally do. And so I thought it would be possibly interesting for some of you out there, particularly those of you who are thinking about running a Reiki business or any kind of small business, or who are in the midst of your own visioning process, to just have a little bit of colleagueship around that. Or if you just want to know what I'm up to. It's also possible this won't be interesting to any of you, but at the very least, it'll be a good record for me to to follow and to look back on in the coming months as I hold myself to accountability with actually moving forward on some of these plans. So to give us a little bit of context, I'll just share a little bit about the structure of my business and kind of, the little bit about the path to this point before sharing my plans for this coming year. So I am a full-time Reiki practitioner and teacher. This has been my full-time work for about 5 years. I started Heartscapes, or opened it officially as a business, in 2017 after kind of a number of years of developing certain perspectives and skills that I thought I might want to apply outside of my own personal practice. I opened this business after about a 12-year career in higher education, focusing in the realm of leadership in social justice areas. And so working with students to build their social justice leadership capacities, connecting them with community resources, offering mentoring, and so on. And I loved that work. It's very aligned with my values and my personal history, and it was very meaningful to do so. However, I found over time that the parts of that job that really spoke to me, that I was the most passionate about and the most skillful at, were the realm of mentoring and holding space for students to kind of work through some of their internal struggles. Oftentimes those struggles that brought them to want to do social justice work in the first place. And what I realized was there wasn't a lot of structure or a lot of opportunity inside of the higher ed spaces I was working in for students to do that internal healing work. And over time, I could see how it impacted them to not have that space, and then to go out into very intense, very emotionally charged work that demanded a lot of them and did not reward them very well. To do that with so much passion and drive, but without much support to understand themselves on that deeper level in relationship to their work. And I could see the impact on them of being in that tension. And I wanted to do something about that. And there was very little opportunity to do so inside of the institution. I came to believe that leadership is best practiced from the inside out. And I wanted to hold a space for people to do that work. In the meantime, I was doing my own work of healing and leading my own self and my own family from the inside out, changing some really entrenched behavioral patterns that were not serving me well, and just doing that transformation work that hopefully many of us get the opportunity to do, that deep and difficult work. And seeing the impact of that on my own life, I wanted to support people in that as well. I'd collected a number of practices during that time that served me very well and that I was excited to share with other people. Reiki certainly was one of them. Soul collage was another. The practice called Overcoming Immunity to Change was another, and various others. And when I opened Heartscapes, it basically was this kind of amalgamation of all of these practices that had been serving me in my life. I opened Heartscapes with a lot of passion, a lot of skill in these individual modalities, but with absolutely no business sense whatsoever. No skills or inclination in the realm of effectively running a small business. And I thought, well, that'll be fine. I'll pick that stuff up along the way. Well, that didn't go so well for several years. The business really was kind of a hot mess of all of these different things jumbled together. I didn't really know how to articulate what I was doing and who it was for, and it was just kind of a mess. I did finally decide I need to invest in some skills building in the area of business, and I invested in a business coaching program called Women in Community, and that radically transformed the way that I relate to my business, the actual relationship between myself and my business as kind of an entity that both reflects very closely who I am, but also is its own creature that has its own needs that I didn't well understand. I'm very grateful to that program. They're an excellent program specifically for female identified people who are small business owners, particularly in the realms of creative work, spiritual or healing work, community work, creators and artists of various types. So if that is you, and if you feel like maybe you're at the point where you could get some support for your endeavors, I'm going to put the link to Women in Community down below. Highly recommend their trainings. So that brought me into 2020. And at that point, I really decided to focus in on Reiki specifically. That part of what was so chaotic about the business was that there were way too many cooks in the kitchen. There was just too many things I was trying to do. And that of those things, the system of Reiki was the thing that I felt most passionate about, I felt most knowledgeable in, and that I was the most known for so far in the business communities I was in. And so I really focused in on that, got a lot more clear about what specifically I wanted to do with Reiki, what made the way that I relate to Reiki particular, and kind of went from there. And then 2020 happened and the business shut down and the whole world had the experience that we all had together. That shaped my business in quite a few ways that I've spoken to in previous videos. I actually started this YouTube channel kind of in 2020 as a space to process really what I was experiencing and what I was observing and what was happening inside of my community. And that was really the place that I chose to do some of that processing. So if you go back to earlier videos, you can kind of see in real time some of the ways in which the experience of 2020 really impacted, this space that we're sharing here. So that mostly brings us up to real time. Just a little bit about structure. This is a solo business. I'm the only official employee. I do have a co-teacher who teaches most of my Reiki classes, at least the core classes with me. That is incredibly valuable to have a thought partner and a teacher to help carry, the container of the classes. We're not business partners, we're teaching partners. And so this is really kind of my vessel that I carry, the business itself. I do have a physical studio. We are in it right now. You get to see parts of it here on these videos. That, is reopening after the 2020, 2021 shutdowns. I see individual Reiki students here, have some classes here, and then as a result of 2020 brought most things online. And so now, like many of us, much of what I offer is in these virtual spaces, including this one. Hello, YouTube. Thank you for being here. I think that's enough context. That's plenty of context. Let's talk about what's coming up this year. So there were a few questions that folks shared with me that when I kind of talked about doing this video, things that they wanted me to address in this video, in the context of creating businesses for Reiki practitioners. And so I will do that. And I wanted to begin with one that actually cracked me up to receive, because I have to just, I have to tell on myself a little bit in terms of, what's been difficult and what's been easy. So a colleague of mine, Sally Carmichael, who is over in Australia, runs Cosmic River Healing. I will put that link down below if you are in the Australia area and want to learn a little bit more about her work. She's a fantastic teacher and practitioner, very aligned with the way that I teach. And so Sally wanted to know whether and in what ways do I build flexibility into this plan? So if we're looking at a year plan, goals and intentions for the year, specific business intentions, do I build in flexibility, and how do I build in flexibility to account for, inspired moments, spontaneous changes, things that come up, and so on? And the reason that made me chuckle is that I truly have the opposite challenge, in that my natural inclination is to be very spontaneous, very kind of in motion all the time, ungrounded in certain ways in which I kind of think and plan and make decisions. I tend to kind of get gripped by an idea or something that I feel excited about, and then just move in that direction, and not necessarily pause and take into account how this is going to impact everything else I have going on, or does this really serve the overall goals? Those kinds of very wise, structured, organized ways of thinking. This is just not how my mind works. It is one of the biggest challenges I have as a solopreneur, as a solo business owner. I am a big vision person. I love to see all of the pieces in the landscape and just kind of move where the wind blows. I actually got a really lovely astrology reading through the lens of evolutionary astrology by a dear friend and colleague named Key Tyler. And she did that live on an interview that we did for the interview series, Reiki, Crossroads, and Connections. That episode will air next week, so check that out. Once it does, I'll put the link down below. And she's like, yeah, you are all fire and air. It's all, my entire chart, with maybe one or two exceptions, is all fire and air. So I'm moving all the time. And so part of why I wanted to do this, to kind of put this plan on paper, this was a real stretch for me. Normally, I would say in the past few years, since doing my business training program, my strategy has been to work on giving myself tethers, giving myself anchor points, so that I can not, squash that visionary, inspired, spontaneous way that I have of thinking, which serves me very, very well, but then causes real challenges in terms of running a business. To not squash that, but to give it tethers and anchoring points. And I've been working on that in small ways, kind of slowly over time, which has often looked like planning, doing this kind of strategic planning in small bites. So, planning for the week, for the month, maybe for the quarter. I've been planning out I've gotten myself where I can plan out kind of a quarter at a time. So, a season at a time. It really helps me quite a lot to align myself with the seasons of the world. I talk a lot about that, about the value of kind of plugging back into the cycles of life, the cycles of the world. There are a lot of reasons for that, spiritual reasons, health reasons. In the context of this conversation, it's one of those things that helps to ground me, helps to give me a rhythm, a pattern that I can follow, that I can count on to a certain degree, that I can tie certain repeating events or tasks to those cycles. And that's been tremendously helpful for me. When I decided last year to convert all of my classes from kind of the one-off weekend model. So doing Reiki 1, Reiki 2, Reiki 3 as one-off weekends classes, convert that to a full year program where all of those classes and one-on-one support and integration time and special topics classes are all put into a coherent container. I was very intimidated by that because I knew, I mean, there was a lot of reasons. Shifting from one model that I'd been doing for years to a very different model had a lot of components, a lot of pieces that had to be put into play. Again, I couldn't have done it without my business coaching because, I really understood the elements of product design, marketing, sales, understanding my customer and how all of those things work together so that I could kind of conceive of the process that would need to happen to make this conversion. But one of the things that was really intimidating about that was that I knew I would have to start planning for the year. At least 1 year, and actually really 2 years, because I run 2 cohorts overlapping, one that starts in January, one that starts in July. So they overlap each other and cross over 2 years. So it was this kind of leveling up opportunity where, okay, we're going to move, like we've gotten pretty good at planning for a quarter. We now need to plan for a couple of years out. And so that's, kind of where this planning process came from. And it's been really powerful to do it and to give myself those tethering points, those anchoring points, so that I can still follow my nature of being spontaneous, but I have some structure. So, Sally, that's a long way of answering your question. But yes, there's absolutely things built in around spontaneity. And my challenge was to actually consciously build in structure and build in foundation. And we'll see how I do. Again, part of why I wanted to make this video was to give myself a little bit of an accountability point. Okay, I'll get to a couple of these other questions a little bit later, but it is about time to start sharing this plan with you. Okay, so this is my vision 2023. To help make the point I just made about my scattered brain, this is how I do my planning. You can see it's basically a picture with like rivers and tributaries, and it's just kind of it can look a little bit chaotic, but it's the way to organize information that makes the most sense to my brain. So I grouped this into 3 sections, kind of the 3 main tributaries of my business. And so I'm kind of envisioning, this beautiful, stable mountain with this strong foundation and this, pure water source at the top, right? This beautiful mountain with the snow cap that's this beautiful, pure water source, and these tributaries that come down the mountain in rivers that then the bottom of the mountain, form this beautiful lake at the bottom. That is my business. And so those 3 tributaries are defined as, first, the core Reiki education. So what I call Heartscape's Reiki Academy, which is a comprehensive Reiki education for people who wish to learn the system of Reiki from the perspective of its Japanese origins. And that tributary primarily contains the core classes, the year program, and our community of practice, which shows up on Facebook and in a monthly live online practice group. I'll put links to both of those down below. We'd love to have you join us. Again, it's a Facebook group and then monthly live community practice sessions. The second tributary is special topics classes, most of which are Reiki oriented, but I do still teach some soul collage. There's other pieces that come through. I'm doing a class on the Book of Joy this spring. So kind of special topics classes that are outside of that core Reiki education. And then one-on-one Reiki sessions I also put in that tributary. Third, collaborations, community projects, and then other creative projects that are not teaching specific. And so this includes writing projects. It includes when I am hired to go to organizations and do retreats or workshops or other kinds of trainings. And then opportunities to just share like talks and little workshops at community gatherings and festivals and stuff like that. Okay, so those are our 3 tributaries. So beginning with our core Reiki education, in this next year, and I should say that in all of these categories, or in most of them, there are things that are that I very much should be able to get done in this year, right? Like there's no reason beyond my own mistakes and procrastinations that would mean I couldn't achieve these things in this coming calendar year. Then there are things that I very much can start, but might not actually get completed this year that will likely carry over to the next year. And then there's things that are really a stretch that may or may not actually happen. Things that I put in the realm of kind of the impossible. But part of visioning is making the impossible possible. Achieving things that felt impossible is actually one of the reasons, at least for me, why I put a vision down on paper and make it visible and kind of bring it out of my head. Is that those things that feel impossible when they're just kind of in my own imagination start to get more concrete and become more and more possible. So those are kind of the 3 categories, and I'll make a note of those. So for core Reiki education, the big thing this year is that we have the first kind of full cohort of the year program. We did a pilot cohort beginning last July. That cohort is about to start their 3rd module for the program. It's been going great. I love this group. It's really affirmed the choice to do the hard work of transitioning to a year program. It's going really, really well. And then just this past weekend, we launched our first kind of out of the beta test, full program with some modifications based on the testing. That just launched last weekend. So the January cohort for 2023. So far, so good. We're in our first week. So my goal for this program for this year is to continue to learn from it, to understand its unique structure, to be very attentive to that, to the way in which I will deepen my understanding of how best to deliver this program, doing that in collaboration with my students. And my goal for that program is that in the July cohort, July 2023, that we launch with a minimum of 8 participants, and that there be very specific cross-pollination between the previous cohorts or the ongoing cohorts and the new cohorts. So building in a little bit more of that community building across cohorts. Related to that, and in the realm of core Reiki education, and this one really should be able to be done this year. It feels a little hard, a little heavy, but also it's kind of been in my mind for a really long time. I have a fairly good sense of the structure of it. It's really more feeling intimidated to step fully into it, but that's to launch our Reiki teacher training apprenticeship program. I am a teacher. I've always been a teacher. When I really look back across my vocational history, all the way back to a teenager, I've done a lot of different things, a lot of different jobs, but just about all of them, even some of the retail jobs, the core of it, the thing that I was most interested in, the thing that stuck with me the most was teaching. I'm always somehow in some form of teaching role. And so when I stepped into teaching Reiki, automatically my mind jumped all the way to teaching teachers. I have a great love and affinity for teachers and very much want the people who are going out into the world and carrying, the system of Reiki, that are culture bearers for the system of Reiki, to go out into that role with a very strong foundation. My particular bias is that people teach as much as possible with an understanding and respect for the origins of the system. And therefore, I feel really passionately about teaching teachers in that way. The skill set that is needed for practicing Reiki well, right? So holding space for people, doing Reiki sessions for people, guiding meditations, and so on. That skill set is a different skill set than teaching. right? And so, just because we're really good at a practice or a process doesn't mean we necessarily automatically have the skills necessary to teach that well. So, long story short, I want to start a teacher training apprenticeship program. And part of what's been holding me up is that so often with the system of Reiki and with my relationship with it and my business, I find myself in a position where I'm really strongly called to do things differently than is typical inside of the current Western Reiki model. The year program is an example of that. While it's becoming more common for people to kind of create these longer spacious containers around Reiki education, it's still very much the norm to teach in weekend classes or even, online single day classes. And similarly with the teacher training, oftentimes that is a piece that's kind of folded into Reiki 3. I've seen a wide range of ways in which teachers will kind of hold that, everything from, well, just taking Reiki 3 in and of itself makes you, qualified to teach the system of Reiki, all the way up to, no, you really need to spend a full year in an apprenticeship program. I feel very grateful that my first Reiki teacher, who taught in the Western Reiki model, really took teaching very seriously. And she made it very clear that taking her Reiki 3 class did not make you a teacher. That is a separate skill set. And that, the way that she did that was through a year-long apprenticeship. And that really spoke to me. That is how I like to learn, and it's how I wanted to do things. But that's very different than most people's model, and it felt very intimidating. And so I really haven't implemented that yet. I do have a couple of students who are interested, who have said that they want to teach and that they would like the kind of support that I offer. And so I'm in the process of really, getting very clear about how to create a firm but also flexible structure for teacher training. And I believe at this point, it's probably going to have maybe 2 tracks. I do want to provide a comprehensive container for somebody who's like, I want to learn, how to build curriculum, how to write a manual, how to design a class, how to teach specific methods. And very importantly, I want them to get direct teaching experience, right? To come in as a teaching assistant to my classes so that they get supervised experience in, teaching a lesson, guiding a practice, and so on. And so there'll be a full teaching apprenticeship that includes classes, modules that people would take to teach different aspects of pedagogy. And then also would have a practicum component where they get the opportunity to get to student teach inside of the classes in the year program. And then for people who already have teaching experience, so like I came into Reiki with a ton of teaching experience, both through higher education and through other kind of leadership and spirituality organizations that I worked for. I had already gone through a very robust teacher training specifically around teaching kind of meditative and spiritual transformation practices. And so at that point, like I wouldn't have needed the whole like deep dive of like, how do you teach? But I needed specific training on how to teach Reiki and specific experience with how to do that live in a classroom. And so there'll probably be a track for people who have teaching experience and are really needing to focus more on Reiki specifically. Boy, that was a lot more detail than I was planning to say about that. It must have been needed. It was actually helpful to say all of that out loud. So bear with me and thank you for listening. So my specific goal for 2023 is when we launch that July cohort that I have at least one teaching apprentice on board for going through that year program with me. There's a couple of people that I want to invite, probably offer that at a much lower rate than ultimately it will cost to just kind of help me beta test that teaching apprenticeship program. If that sounds appealing to any of you listening, reach out. So that is my goal. launch the July cohort with at least one teaching apprentice. Okay, I'm going to take a breath there. I've been talking a lot in the last half an hour. Thank you. If you are still with me in this video, thank you for listening. Moving on. So the third piece in that first tributary is the community of practice. And in this section, it's really expanding and strengthening that community of practice. It had a particular form for the first several years of my business that was very intimate, very in-person. We basically had a half day, once a week, or once a month, where we would gather in person and have lunch and socialize and, and then do practice. And it was a very beautiful, community experience that allowed a lot of friendships to develop. And then things change. 2020 happened. We could no longer gather in person. We shifted to an online community of practice that I was very grateful to have that option. But, the feeling of that in-person kind of community, we didn't have that anymore. And people kind of cycled out of it. And I started thinking, how could this serve us better? How could this structure work better? And so, and then tied to that monthly group was the Facebook group where we would communicate and kind of have conversations. And so both of those spaces were very closed. I really only had them open to people who were students, right? So who had taken a class with me or who were in progress taking a class. So it was a very small pool of people, very intimate, very connected. And as those dynamics started to shift with having to go online, it was kind of this point, and those of you who have run communities or businesses like this maybe have had this experience where something that was working for a long time, dynamics change, and then that structure just isn't working anymore. And that was the case with a community of practice. And I had to think, okay, and it was getting really frustrating, honestly, I'm still putting a lot of energy into holding this space, and it's just, there isn't the energy for it from the community anymore. And so, it was kind of this, do I just let it die? Do I stop doing it? Or does it need to change? And honestly, that first option of let it die, not really an option, not a wise choice. It was on the table just out of fatigue and frustration, to be honest. Clearly, the correct choice was to let it evolve and to change. And so that's what we're up to. So that is going to be a work in progress. I'm going to have to really carefully monitor these changes to make sure it still works and still kind of holds what I need it to. But the first change was to open both of those spaces up to a much wider audience. So making the Facebook group open to anybody who is interested in the system of Reiki from its Japanese perspectives, whether or not they had taken classes with me, and same with the practitioner circle. The practitioner circle is now open to people who are either in the Facebook group or on my newsletter. So access to that group will be available in those two places. So the Facebook group and my newsletter. If you would like to join us in a future practitioner circle, we hold it for about an hour online every third Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific. You're welcome to join us in the Facebook group or join my newsletter. I'll put those links down below. So, that's already breathed life into this space. There's already, quite a few people who have kind of joined and who will join us for the practice circle this month. And new moderating challenges in the Facebook group because, the mindset that people are coming into is broader, right? I used to have it very narrow, people who are studying Reiki with me in a very specific way. And so I'm going to be learning how to best moderate that space so that the focus stays clear. I do not want this to be a group that, like many Reiki groups that I'm in that are valuable and work well for their intended purpose, which is different than mine, where it's kind of just any question, any perspective, any conversation topic that's even remotely related to Reiki is on the table. This group is still very focused on practicing Reiki from the perspective of its Japanese origins. And so, my learning curve is going to be how to moderate that with kindness and compassion, but also with boundaries around the subject matter inside of that group. And hopefully I'll learn how to do that well. It's been going all right so far. So expanding the community of practice in 2023, doing that well, bringing it back into a place that feels robust and alive. And that helps more people find us, right? That helps more people be served by Heartscapes Reiki, receive value from this space, and be connected to us. Okay, that was the tributary of core Reiki education. We will now move on to the second, which is special topics and Reiki sessions. So in this tributary, the first thing that I want to accomplish this year is to create 1 to 2 online self-paced classes. So over the years that I've been running this business, I've developed a lot of curriculum. Curriculum design and program design is like one of my favorite things. I love it. I am good at it. I absolutely love taking experiences that have meaning to me, information that I find fascinating and meaningful, and then these pedagogical practices that I've learned in terms of how to weave these things together into a powerful, facilitated experience. I love that. And so I have a ton of curriculum that is kind of in retirement at the moment, or that we kind of circulate in. It's too much to teach all of the time. And so there's a couple of things in particular that I think would work really well as a online kind of evergreen self-paced class. You all know the kind, right? Where you sign up, it's relatively inexpensive, so it's accessible because it's not live. So the time has been delinked from the practitioner's time, right? You invest the time all at once in the beginning and then some maintenance time along the way. But for the most part, once you've created the thing, your main time investment is in marketing it, and therefore it can be offered at a lower cost, be more accessible to more people, and provide an opportunity for people to get to know you and to be served by your business in ways that are accessible. I really like this model. I think I have been a customer of this kind of product a lot. I have seen the range in them being well done, not well done, providing value, not providing value. And I've been, really strongly intending to do this for some time, but also, again, a little intimidated because I really do want to do it well, right? I don't want to put a product out there that is, the people are like, that wasn't even worth the $37 or $97 or whatever it was. And, I know that the content is solid, but where I need to build capacity this year is in the technology side. So, full disclosure, I make these YouTubes on my phone, right? So my phone camera is what we're using here in this space. And, I feel like to really create a nice online course, I at the very least need perhaps a better camera and some video editing skills and technology. So those are things that I need to build, infrastructure I need to build, have been working on, have made some headway on that, but that's a big goal for this year. Those 2 topics that are on my mind that I think I would like to start with, one is on Reiki and intuition. I did a whole year of monthly intuition lab classes, built up a lot of kind of community, crowdsourced information about our experiences with intuition. Have done a lot of kind of study and thinking about the connections of intuition and Reiki. And that's a topic that is consistently interesting to the general public. When I do videos on it, when I've done standalone classes, when I've done free monthly classes on the topic of intuition, they're always well attended. And so obviously there's energy and interest in that topic. And I think it would make a really great evergreen course. And then the other is Reiki Foundations, which is, giving people a accessible introduction to the foundations of Reiki from the Japanese perspective, much of which is on this YouTube channel already, but in a bit of a scattered form. So really putting it in a coherent form with supplementary materials giving people a more robust opportunity to come to understand the foundations of the system of Reiki, learn the foundational practices as kind of a starting point for their Reiki journey, a starting point or a complete experience in and of itself. That curriculum I have taught many times as a live in-person class, and it feels like it's ready to evolve into this other form. So if all goes well, by the end of this year, those 2 classes will be available. Related to that, this is just kind of more of a maintenance thing. As I said, I have a lot of curriculum designed already and a lot of things that continue to arise. And so my intention is to hold at least 2 special topics classes every quarter. So every season, in addition to the year program. And so those would be topics that are open to people who are not in the year program. Some of them are geared specifically for Reiki practitioners. For example, my Cultivating a Trauma-Informed Reiki class, which is coming up in March, I believe the next one is. And that's specifically for Reiki practitioners or practitioners of similar arts who want to cultivate a trauma-informed perspective on their practice. And then a lot of the other classes are really open to anybody with interest. They don't have to be Reiki trained at all. The other one coming up this season is on ritual, on the art of spontaneous ritual. So kind of giving context of what ritual is from a certain perspective. That's a bigger question, but a particular perspective on that. How it functions inside the system of Reiki and in our life in general, why it's important to understand the function of ritual in our life and to cultivate that function in our life, and then techniques for how to design spontaneous ritual in your life. So in other words, something happens and we recognize that a ritual would be supportive in this moment, and we have the tools and understanding and confidence to pull together something that feels like a powerful ritual in the moment, spontaneously, which can be very short, very simple, or more elaborate, depending on the situation. This is a skill that I've been developing for a number of years and really appreciating the value of. We teach it in the year program. It felt important to pull that out as a standalone class. So those are the next 2 coming up. And then in spring, like I said, the Book of Joy class. So the intention being to hold 2 every season, 2 special topics classes every season, and just to really maintain that. And then thirdly, I want to expand my one-on-one Reiki sessions. Offering Reiki healing sessions to clients was where this business started. That was primarily what the business was when it began, and that has been, of course, a really important piece of the business. And that was the piece that took a major hit in 2020 when the studio had to close. I did design a phone-based Reiki session that I'm very proud of, that's very effective, that I really enjoy doing. And that is now the more common way that people work with me one-on-one. Slowly, the in-person one-on-ones are coming back. I missed them. I love doing them. And it's the kind of bread and butter offering that a business like mine really needs to kind of stay sustainable between the higher priced things like classes in the year program. And so it really is important for me to have a relatively consistent stream of clients who come for one-on-one sessions, ideally clients who commit to doing a series of sessions over time. It's better for them, for their own wellness practice. It's better for me, for consistent, predictable income. And so my goal for this year is to expand that. Right now, I would say it varies all over the place from week to week. So it's not consistent, firstly. But I would say on average, I'm seeing maybe 1 or 2 people a week on a one-on-one Reiki session. And I'd like that to expand to 5 or 6 consistently per week. Yeah, so that is that tributary of special topics and Reiki sessions. Y'all, I realize I'm talking really fast. Part of that is because I'm excited and I'm working through this material, but I'm also aware that this video is super, super long. Again, if you're still here with me, hats off to you. I appreciate you being here. Like and subscribe to this channel. That will help to keep us going. And if you're still here after 46 minutes, you obviously like what we're doing. So thanks for being here. Stick around. Okay, friends, we got one more tributary and then some follow-ups to go, and we're done. That last tributary is the collaborations and projects outside of teaching. And so the first goal here is to begin, and this is going to be one that I anticipate beginning this year. If it gets completed this year, I will be thrilled, but I am not expecting it to complete this year. But that is to begin the process of publishing a book, specifically related to the trauma-informed Reiki class that I mentioned earlier. For that class, I wrote a very comprehensive, about 77-page workbook that I'm very proud of, that has been very valuable for that class. And every time I've taught the class, several people will always say, hey, this workbook should be a book, right? Like, you should make this into a book that people can purchase separately and that can stand alone from the classes and be a resource outside of the class. And I think that's a fine idea. I have never published a book. I've only maybe published articles. I published a chapter in a book once. That was somebody else's project. I didn't have to be responsible for any of the business side of it. So I feel very intimidated by this, but it also feels like something that would be kind of ridiculous not to at least try. So I've already done a fair amount of research on publishers. There's one in particular that I plan to submit a manuscript to. The manuscript is basically already done. It's the workbook, but it feels really good to start the year with one specific publisher that feels like a good fit, that I can submit this to, holding my expectations lightly, understanding and accepting no for an answer if that's what comes. But if I can get this submission for this one publisher in by mid-year, by July, I'll feel good about that. And then from there, hopefully it would be easier to submit to other publishers. So moving that project forward. Secondly, I want to hold workshops or session spaces in 4 to 6 like conference or festival contexts. This was something that I used to do a lot. It was my favorite form of marketing. In early 2020, as part of my business coaching program, I actually planned out a whole year of in-person events like this. And this is like where there would be a conference on some topic. I used to do conferences all the time when I worked in higher ed. And so I really love finding conferences that are kind of in the realm of higher ed or in social justice work, but where there's this openness to wellness and self-care and working with the subconscious and working with the emotions, maybe even a little spirituality, and coming and bringing sessions to those kinds of spaces. That is my favorite. But I've also worked with, spiritual festivals and psychic fairs and arts and craft fairs, and I don't know, whatever feels interesting in the moment. And that'll usually be either a workshop of some sort, a short workshop, a talk, a discussion on a topic, and or offering short Reiki sessions, at the event. So 4 to 6 of that kind of event for this year, really restart that process. As I said, I had planned out a whole year of that kind of thing in the beginning of 2020. And then, of course, they all got shut down. Every single one canceled. So that was a big blow. Like, I put a lot of work into, realizing that in-person marketing really is where I shine. And, setting all of that up and then having it all just knocked down was a huge blow to me. And so I want to really recover that energy and kind of go back to that. And then the last project that I'm going to talk about is so dear to my heart. Again, if you're still with me here, then you get to be the one to hear me speak this project that is so dear to me, that I so want to happen. I want it to happen this year, but this is another one that if I get significant traction on it this year, but it happens next year, I'm okay with that. But I would love for it to happen in the fall of this year. And this is in the realm of something that's always been an intention of my business for me, which is to bring together that work that I did for so long in social justice leadership development, those realizations that people who do that kind of work, that on the ground social change work, are not well supported in their wellness and their spiritual development, and that it's my role, what I want to step into is to being that space of support. I've been learning how to do that in different ways, finding opportunities to do that, but I want that to be much more explicit going forward. And the idea that was planted in my heart by a colleague of mine is to host a wellness retreat for social justice change workers. Going back into that pool of colleagues from all of those years of working in that realm, and creating a truly nourishing, just beautiful, rich, restful experience for them at a beautiful retreat center, pulling in colleagues from my current work who can come and offer their amazing services to these people, that it be a space of just service and appreciation for people doing this work in the world, that they get to just surrender into being cared for and connect with each other. So to have an opportunity for connecting, for networking, for reconnecting with their own purpose and inspiring each other with that purpose, really grounding back into their why they are doing the hard work that they're doing, and to come out of it re-inspired, refreshed, and for that experience to not cost them a penny. So this is the part that's, challenging, is that I really want this to be fully funded by some outside organization, from a hospital or some medical foundation that, has a wellness emphasis, from some sort of funding organization that has a priority on supporting the people doing the work. Most often, funding for social justice work, it's a high priority that the money goes specifically to the end service user, right? The people on whose behalf the work is being done, kind of bypassing the people doing the work. And I totally understand why that is, right? We're in the work to impact people's lives, but we need our lives to be positively impacted in order to do the work, right? And so it's a little bit tricky finding funding for this kind of thing, but I feel certain that it is out there. And this is a big research project that I have to undertake. I'm not super passionate about research, but I will do it. And so that's the goal, is to, if at all possible, hold this retreat in the fall of 2023. Set it up as something that can recur, because I definitely do not want this to be a one-time only thing. I want this to be part of what we do. It would be absolutely amazing to receive a multi-year funding for it, but a single year funding would be acceptable and appreciated. To have it fully funded, to be able to pay practitioners well to come and offer these services, to be able to rent a really beautiful space for us to hold it in, and to create a really powerful curriculum for the people who attend. I'm thinking about up to about a dozen people. So if that is significantly underway this year, I'm happy. If it gets to happen this year, I am delighted. If it gets to happen multiple years because there's multi-year funding, I am absolutely thrilled, and I will call that achieving the impossible, and we will celebrate greatly, and we will pass on, and we will pay forward all of that goodness in so many ways, speaking that into being. If any of you listening have any connections with retreat center in Northern California that might be willing to donate the space or funding opportunities for something like this, or you just want to attend, or you know somebody who should attend, please do let me know. This is absolutely a passion project of mine, and I'm excited and very intimidated by it. Not by the curriculum. I have designed and hosted numerous retreats over the years. It's like the holding the space is not the intimidating part, but usually, pretty much always, I've been the one brought in to facilitate the retreat, but I was not the one who had to fund the retreat, figure out the logistics, all of the back end stuff that has to happen for something complex like that to happen. I've not been the one in charge of that. I just get to show up and create a wonderful space for people. So may it be so. May it be robust. May it be beautiful. May it happen this year. God, it felt kind of good saying all of that out loud, publicly, on YouTube. One other piece that I'll say out loud, and then I want to respond to the other question that I got, is just to kind of name the things that, some of the things. This list is vast. I'm not going to go through everything, but just some of the key things, because, all of those goals for this year are going to require some sort of change or development on my part in order to make happen, because they're expansions or additions to what I'm already doing. So just some of the things that I need to learn, collect, do in order for any of this to happen. So firstly, I need some basic video editing software and skills to kind of handle the tech side of upgrading online classes and such. I need to do research around the funding sources I just mentioned, and book publishing resources for the book project. I need to grow this channel, Heartscapes Reiki on YouTube, to 1,000 subscribers. That is my goal for this year. Hey, you guys can directly help me with this one. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do. You can like this video, you can comment on it, which stimulates the algorithm to send it around, and you can share it with other folks in your network who might benefit from thinking through a strategic planning process. Or if that's not their jam, find another video on the channel to share around. Help us get there, help us grow. I think we're about 556 now. It's just the ittiest bittiest little channel. Monetizing this channel is not an important goal of mine. If it happens, cool, I'll take it. But more important is the way in which this space connects me to you, to folks who are interested in the things that I do, the conversations that I get to have, the learning that I get to have from the questions you ask and the stories that you share. Primarily for me, this YouTube channel is a point of connection and a place where I get to share from my heart. And so I would like that to happen more and more. And so this year's goal is to get to 1,000. That feels doable. It feels like a bit of a stretch because the growth has been very slow so far. But, and I know that means I need to be much more consistent in my posting. So back to that talk about how I tend to be kind of air and fire and all over the place and not super consistent and not super grounded with like structure. That applies to this YouTube channel. YouTube rewards structure in terms of how they share videos around and make your channel accessible to people. And so that's one of the commitments that I'm making, to be more structured here on YouTube. I'm not going to make any declarations about what that looks like yet, because I don't want to say something I can't deliver. But anyway, grow this channel to 1,000 subscribers and grow my newsletter to 1,000 subscribers as well. And and expanding that community of practice in ways that I've already described. So that is the vision for 2023. The other question that I received is what I'm going to close with, which is, if I was, 10 years ago or just starting out, figuring out how to do this business. So for me, that would have been probably around 2015 was when I was really starting to, seriously think about this business. And then 2017 was when I got the business license. So that was the official start. But if I was at that phase, how would I go about doing this planning, right? So back then, how would I have gone through doing this planning? And it feels like there's maybe two different ways to answer this question. I'm not sure what the original intention was from the person who asked it, but I'll address both. So one is like literally, how would I have done it 8 years ago? The person who I was back then, how would I have gone about strategic planning? And I think the answer to that is that I wouldn't have, because I didn't know about strategic planning. I wasn't organized. I didn't know anything about business, as I have mentioned before. So I would say that if somebody had said, okay, you should do a year strategic plan back then, it would have been very dysfunctional, very disorganized, very ungrounded. It would not have had, I feel like it would have been very all over the place and probably very unrealistic, dysfunctional. The other way to interpret that question is, how might I advise myself from this perspective of somebody who is doing this better, who has put effort into learning how to do these skills, who has a long way to go in doing them well and consistently, but certainly is much better off than I was back then. How would current me advise past me to do this process? And I would say to 2015 Michaela, first and foremost, to be honest about my limitations. Because at the time, I was very honest about my skills, and that was something that I had to work up to, right? Like owning the confidence and owning my capacity and my capabilities. So that was a win, to be able to say, I am good enough at these things to want to make a business out of them. But I was not honest about the deep deficits in my skills that I still had, specifically in the realm of business, strategic planning, all of this area. I kind of blew it off like, well, that stuff will come, right? If you're really good at what you do and you have a good product and you're passionate about it, it'll work out. I mean, generally, that's not how it works, I have learned. So I would advise myself to be, number one, very honest about what I don't know, right? Not with shame, but with intention to rectify that. And I would have absolutely insisted that I get that business development training earlier on, more on the front end. It happened to work out for me because, the program that came along when it did was perfect and the timing was good. And so I'm not mad about kind of where I am now. But for somebody first starting out, I would absolutely advise that unless you do have business development training, that you get that, because it truly is a different skill set than whatever it is that you're wanting to do. Like, you didn't come to your work, to your passion work, because you loved marketing, unless your job is marketing. Right? You didn't come to it because you love sales calls, right? You didn't love it because you come to it because you loved making spreadsheets about, customer data, right? You came to it because you're passionate about what you want to do to serve the world. And so you need support in those other areas. And until you can hire somebody to do that stuff for you, which, by the way, is also on my impossible achievements list for this year. I do want to hire somebody to help with certain pieces of this. And I've got a little bit of that in motion already. But until you can hire somebody to do those pieces for you, you are all of it. You are it. And you will need to have some basic help with that. So those I would say are the things that I would have advised myself to really prepare myself to do a strategic planning process like this. On the other side of that, I would say to myself back then, do all of those things that I just said to get really structured and solid as you can. And at the same time, don't lose the special qualities that make you good at the work in the first place. In other words, don't tamp down that fire, right? Don't make so many anchors and tethers to the ground that I lose the ability to go up high in vision. Don't think about my own energy cycles as bad or wrong. I've spent a lot of time shaming myself for the fact that I tend to operate with short bursts of inspiration, short bursts of motivation and energy where I can get a lot done in my business, even the things I don't love doing, and then long periods where I need to rest and kind of step back and vision and be with my garden, and those periods can be long, and that can be really disruptive and really frustrating. And so rather than shaming that part of myself, which I did for many years, because it did not work well at all working in higher ed, where you need to just keep going and going and going all the time, consistently. So I shamed myself for that for a long time. One of the values of running my own business, there's a lot of responsibility and accountability that's needed to get everything done when I don't have an external, boss or team, giving me outside accountability. But the benefit of that is that I can give myself the space to learn how to still be myself inside of this business, while at the same time being honest about and cultivating the skills that I don't have well, and to find those places where those two sides come together so that neither one of them squashes the other. And I can honestly say, after now 3 years of actively working on the business side of things and actively working on better understanding my own inherent nature when it comes to these things, my relationship to my business, that I am in a really good place of bringing those things together. I feel so much more grounded. I feel so much more clear about what I'm doing. I feel like I know the next right thing to do most of the time. I have some structures in place to help me move those forward. They're not the most efficient, whatever. I'm not, what? Let me take that asterisk off, right? I have structures in place to help me move them forward. And I still allow myself to follow my own nature when it comes to my business, while at the same time being able to keep my focus a little bit more closed in than I used to, where I would try to just do everything that I wanted to do. There are so many things that I would love to do inside of my business that all would need their own business strategy around. And again, until I have help in this business, until I have a team more than just me, I can't do all of it, right? And so I can vision to a time when I'm successful enough that I can hire that team, and that the systems that I've been building are working so smoothly that I don't have to put so much attention into them. The year-long Reiki Academy is just rolling, and I know how to bring students into that, how to connect with the right people who really would be well served by it. I don't have to put so much effort into that. At that point, I can open up to other things and other offerings. But I feel settled in the need to be more focused, and I feel good about that. So that's the advice I would give myself in 2015, and that is the advice I would share with you if you find yourself in a similar situation. I really hope that something in this was valuable to you, either in your own process or understanding this space better. I really appreciate you being here and listening. I'd love to hear what you are planning for 2023 and beyond. What are some goals that you're holding on to? Maybe you haven't even spoken them out loud yet. Maybe they still feel impossible, right? What is your impossible goal? What is your stretch goal? What are the things that you feel confident that you can, in fact, achieve this year? I would love to hear them, whether or not they're related to Reiki at all, right? Let this be a community space where you can speak it out loud and have some celebration around that. I'm really glad that you've stuck with me here till the end. I appreciate you being here. And as you move into 2023, into your own tributaries, into your own goals, may you be deeply, deeply provisioned for that journey. Thank you all for being here. Until next time, I love you. Goodbye.